This is Dominic Menlick with the Nebraska High School Republicans, and today we're joined by Omaha Mayor Jean Stothert. Mayor Stothert has served the city of Omaha since she first took office in June of 2013, when she was elected the first woman ever to hold the office in the city's history. Mayor Stothert, thank you for being with us today.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
I want to start by helping our young people understand more about you and your political history. As I mentioned, you were the first woman ever to be mayor in Omaha's history.
Yes.
As a mother and grandmother, what does that mean to you, and do you have a message for any young girls out there considering public service?
Absolutely, I do. And it's quite an honor. I'm the 51st mayor of Omaha. There's been 50 before me, and they've all been men. So it was historic when we actually won the race. And it was not easy. I was on the city council for 4 years before that. And for almost 12 years before that, I was on the Millard School Board. But when I decided to run for mayor of Omaha, I got a lot of comments about, why don't you just stay on the city council or the school board, because this is a job for a man. And I never ran based on my gender. I ran on my abilities, that I could do this job just as well as anybody else. When I was on the city council, I treated that job as a full-time job. I was down at City Hall almost every day. I learned all about the city departments. I learned how to budget. I learned how to negotiate labor contracts. I knew the city, and I knew I could do the job. But I hope that I'm just paving the path for many women after me, that they can see that even though it's a struggle and it's not easy, that we can do it. And women can be just as good of leaders as men can. And in fact, there's a lot of research and studies about why there aren't as many women in higher elected positions. And a lot of times people will tell me when I talk to women about running, they're afraid they're going to lose is why they don't run. And you're never going to win unless you try. And there is no shame in running a race and not winning if you give it everything you can. I lost a race in 2006. I ran for the legislature and lost by 14 votes. But I learned a lot about myself in that race too, and you learn how to pick yourself up and do things better the next time. And so I would just say to any woman or anyone that is thinking of running for a political office, you're not going to win unless you try. And it's running for political office. It's fun, it's grueling, it's hard, it's time consuming, but the results are really, really great afterwards. I've enjoyed every elected position I had. And so I hope a lot more women will consider running for political office. I love my job. It's fun. I'm not that kind of person that at Sunday night I think, I have Monday morning dread. That's not me at all. It energizes me. I love my job. I love going in there every day. And I would just encourage more people to consider running for political office.
You mentioned that you say this job energizes you.
It does.
And yet, if you were reelected, you'd be Omaha's longest consecutively serving mayor in history.
Yes.
So why have you decided to run for re-election?
People ask me that a lot too, and again, it energizes me. There has not ever been in the history of Omaha a mayor that has served 3 consecutive terms. But that doesn't mean that we can't do that, because there's never been a woman that has served 1 term. And so, we broke some historic records with that. And I want to stay on for numerous reasons. Number 1, I do love my job and I love Omaha. Number 2, I have started so many things, so many developments, so many projects, so many things are going on in Omaha right now that myself and my team started. I want to see it through and I want to see it finished. I've assembled probably what I would consider the best team of directors and staff that the city of Omaha has ever had. And they work really well together and they work with the community really well. And that's what it's all about. We get things done in Omaha with partnerships with the city and the private sector and the philanthropic community. And that's how we get things done. And my staff has done such a good job at forging those relationships. And I want to continue those on. We did a great job, I think, of navigating through the pandemic. This was something that we never asked for. It was something that was very, very challenging. Mayors all over the country are struggling right now with the budget and their economy and their employees and housing issues and utility issues and rental assistance issues and businesses going out. And there's a lot that we have dealt with that we had no idea this time last year that we would be dealing with. But We dealt with them, and we dealt with them very well. But it's not just carrying on what we've done. There are different things that I want to look at in 2021, and there are different things that I have goals to achieve. We just announced a 10-point COVID recovery priority plan just the other day in a press conference that's available on my website to look at. But there's a lot we still need to do, and so I just feel like I'm the person to lead the city through this. When you run for re-election and you're an incumbent, it's a referendum on the job that you have done. And I think people know what I've done. They know how I manage the city. They know how I manage the budget. I'm very conservative with the budget. They know what my priorities are, like for instance, public safety is my number one priority. They know what I've done as far as police officers and police precincts and crime statistics. So I just feel like I'm the one to carry on what has happened, and then I'm the one to lead the city for the next 4 years.
Well, you bring up a lot there, Mrs. Mayor, and we hope to get to at least a few of those things: development,
Sure.
the virus, as well as law and order.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to start out by asking you this. You have raised a family in Omaha, and you call Omaha home. Mm-hmm. What work have you done to help ensure that, say, my generation also wants to make Omaha a place where they raise their family?
Absolutely. And I'm not from Omaha either. I'm from
Right.
St. Louis. I moved here about 25 years ago with my family. We were living down in Texas at the time. And I'll have to tell you, it's kind of a funny story. I'll be quick. But my kids were small. They were going into kindergarten and second grade. And I loved living in southern Texas where we were. And my husband was offered a job up here. And I didn't want to move. I had never been to Omaha. I didn't want to move. I loved where I was.
No snow problems down there.
No snow problems at all in Galveston, Texas. And that's part of my story, because I came up here for the first time in April. I left Houston Hobby. It was about probably 100 degrees in April. I had shorts and sandals on. I got off the plane here at Epley, and there was a blizzard and a snowstorm going on. And I thought, oh my gosh, where has he asked me to move to? But by the end of the first day, I loved it here. There was just a feeling about Omaha. I love the people. I love what I saw. I visited the schools. I love that, and I've never looked back. And so I really love being here, and I love the city. And so that is something that I've never changed my mind about at all. But repeat your question, because I got off track a little bit.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah. What have you done as mayor to help make Omaha a place where, say, my generation, we want to raise a family?
Absolutely. And a lot of it has to do with making Omaha a more welcoming, a more connected city. There is so much that we have done with developing our urban core, for example. And and we look at what younger people want, what millennials want in a city. They want connectivity, they want walkability, they want safety, they want the option of multiple good paying jobs, they want opportunities to see arts and culture. And these are the things that we have kept in mind, and we've been successful. We are always on these top 10 lists. And, we have, within the past 5 years, we've been on one of the top 10 cities that millennials want to move back to. We've been on a top 10 list of where people want to retire. We are on top 10 list for finding jobs and high paying jobs. Our unemployment rate is really, really low. So there's a lot that we have done working with our business community, which we work very closely with the Chamber of Commerce, and they are always out looking for not only to help maintain and keep our current businesses successful, but they are always looking, and I help them with that, for new jobs, for people to have multiple options for what they want to do with their careers. Great example is several years ago, I was on vacation in the Napa Valley, and the president of the chamber was down in Silicon Valley visiting LinkedIn. And he called me one morning and he said, I hear you're in California. He said, can you come down and help me? I got in the car and drove down there and met him, and we met with LinkedIn, and we were trying to pitch Omaha for a place to expand. And guess what? They're doing that now. Yeah. And so, we are our fastest growing industries right now in the city of Omaha. People don't realize this, but it's healthcare, it's health research and technology. And those are all areas that are very, very appealing to our younger professionals and our younger citizens in Omaha. So we just have to keep that in mind, keep it moving forward. Another good example I could give you is this huge project we're doing downtown on 90 acres of city-owned property. It's the Jean Leahy Mall, Heartland of America Park, and then the Lewis and Clark Landing. We own all of that. We own all of that property. But what is going to happen with that, and we know it will because it happened many, many years ago in the early 70s, is it just sparks development and business around that area. And so you're going to see a lot more business, you're going to see a lot more retail, you're going to see a lot more housing down there, and all of that is really, really attractive to our younger people, our younger professionals, our younger citizens.
That was actually my next question, was on the Jean Leahy Mall. You talk about how revitalizing the riverfront is going to, help enrich our city life. Talk to me a little bit about what is involved with that project and how it's going.
Yeah, it's going great. It's a huge project, and interestingly enough, before the pandemic, I would attend meetings all over the country with other mayors, and other mayors are just astounded at the public-private partnerships that we've developed in Omaha. This is a great example. Again, it's 90 acres of city-owned property. The city is putting in $50 million, and the private sector is putting in $350 million. Wow. Now, any investor will tell you, if you could put in 50 and get 350 back,
that's a good deal.
That's a pretty good investment. And because that private money is there and the city money is there and available now, there has been no delays in that project at all. In fact, it's right on schedule. And the Jean Leahy Mall will open first, followed by Heartland of America Park, followed by Lewis and Clark Landing. The latest addition is a STEM science museum that will be down on the Lewis and Clark Landing where the old restaurant used to be. It's over $100 million project, 100% paid by private money. And that will offer a lot of opportunities for our high school kids and our college kids to go and work in that museum, to be able to see all of the things that they have in there. It's not going to be full of artifacts. It's going to be a hands-on science museum. Kiewit is one of the major sponsors of it. And it'll be things like how to build a bridge or how to build a community. Or, there's multiple things as far as math and science and technology that people will be able to every day of the year go down there and enjoy. And so there's going to be a lot to offer on this project for everyone. There'll be dog parks, there'll be destination playgrounds, there'll be water features down there, there'll be sculpture and an art garden, there'll be a permanent pavilion out there for all sorts of different activities. It's going to be transformational for downtown. But along with that is what happens around it. Because like I said, in the early 70s, late 60s, people started moving out of downtown. And one of the things that really sparked that in the beginning was Crossroads Mall. And you'd think Crossroads is 5 miles from downtown, 5 miles west. But that started moving everybody west. And downtown started to crumble. And then they started to revitalize it again. And what they did is build the Jean Leahy Mall. And when they built the Jean Leahy Mall, there was over 20 new buildings that were built around there, and it just sparked revitalization down there. And we know that's what's going to happen with this too. So there's a lot of interest in the Jean Leahy Mall and all the project down there, and it's moving along very, very fast.
That brings us nicely into talking about your record with the economy and the economic recovery that's facing our city. So as mayor, you've cut property taxes twice,
yes,
which is on everyone's mind here in Nebraska. And you've also helped to rein in spending at the city level. Now this pandemic has left us with a budgetary shortfall. Talk to us about what your plan is for economic recovery in Omaha and what that's going to look like.
Sure. And I manage the city's budget very, very conservatively. But I develop it like no other mayor has done, and I help develop the budget with the finance department. Usually the finance department does the work and kind of lets the mayor know what their plan is. I help each city department develop their budget. I sit down with them, we give them their targets. I estimate how much revenue I'm going to have for the next year, and that's primarily sales tax, followed by property tax, and then followed by occupation taxes. We estimate the amount of money we have. I help each department develop their budget, and then after it is passed by the city council, it's passed in August, comes effective January 1st, it is my responsibility and my responsibility solely to make sure that that budget stays balanced. And so I do not look at it just once or twice a year. I look at it every month. Every single month, I watch the budget, and if I see any department getting off, I meet with them and find out how we can rein them in and how we can keep them within the budget. I do a quarterly report to the community every year, too, to let the community know every city department who's on budget, who isn't. But at the end of the year, I have to make sure that budget is balanced December 31st. It's balanced to the penny January 1st. I have to make sure it's balanced to the penny at the end of the year. So that's my responsibility. So I watch it very carefully. But since I've been mayor, we have had a budget surplus at the end of every year. And that's not because we're charging too much taxes, because like I said, in the beginning of the year, it's balanced. It's because we manage it very, very carefully, and I try to rein in and control spending. Now, a good example of how hard we worked was 2020, because we didn't expect the pandemic. We had about $75 million worth of revenue loss in our general fund budget, and it's a $420 million budget. So you take $75 million out of it, it was extremely hard to figure out how we were ever going to get through this. And so what I did early on, even before we knew what we were going to get from the federal government, back in March, I did whatever I could to control spending right then and there. And I cut about $22 million out of the budget.
Speaking still with the coronavirus on the same line here, the vaccine rollouts started to begin. Mm-hmm. How has Omaha been handling that? Has the vaccine rollout been going well? Have we encountered the problems that some other cities are facing?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. And, you know, it's the governor that has been given the authority by the president, past president, President Trump, to basically make the decisions about the federal dollars that were coming in, and also about the vaccines in the beginning. And the governor has set up his a different phased plan. It's tiered, different levels, about level 1A, who's in that level, who gets top priority to get the vaccines, who's in 1B, et cetera. But the problem I see now, and the problem that our Douglas County Health Director, Audie Poor, and she's in charge in Douglas County, the mayor does not have the authority to do healthcare directives. It's only the governor and the public health director, but I work very closely with both of them. The problem we all see now, it's not in the distribution, it is in the manufacturing. So we just aren't getting enough doses. And a good example of that I'll give you is just recently, the governor added a new tier of people into the category 1B. And it used to be 75 years old or older was in 1B. Now it's 65 and older is in 1B. But under that were teachers, and under that were police officers. When they added the 65-year-olds, that added in Douglas County alone 75,000 more people to get vaccinated before the teachers and before the police officers. We are getting 6,660 doses a week. So 6,600 a week, and we have 75,000 more to vaccinate before we even get to the teachers and the police. Now, Johnson & Johnson, they may get emergency approval soon and get that vaccine out. That's a one-dose vaccine. It's not as effective as the Moderna or the Pfizer, but I would recommend anybody, if they're offered it to them, get it. It's about 66% effective, but I would go ahead and get it. But we have established, Dr. Poor has, and we, like I said, we work together well, 4 mass testing sites in Omaha, and one in basically each quadrant of the city, and then another one at Charles Drew in North Omaha, and another one at One World in South Omaha to get people vaccinated. The issue is we don't have enough doses. And that's the one thing that, you know, I'm promising with my COVID recovery priority plan, and Dr. Poor is too, that we're going to do everything we can to get more vaccines here so we can get our population vaccinated.
So your message is take the vaccine.
Take the vaccine, yes. Now, I haven't had the vaccine, but I'm in that category now that I could get the vaccine, but I am still going to be, it'll be a while before I get it. So, you know, we all have to wait our turn with that criteria established by the governor. Now, if we get more vaccines, like if Johnson & Johnson's comes out, then there might be the possibility then that we could, you know, up those people in those different categories and get them vaccinated quicker. But that is a primary goal that we have, Dr. Poor and I, is to get as many vaccinated as we can.
Do you want to talk to us a little about, you said you rolled out this COVID response plan, recovery plan. Mm-hmm. What are some of the points of that? You know,
one of the points, and I want to make this, that I support continuing the mask ordinance. We are in a phase right now. It's called the green phase. The governor just announced that. It started at midnight last night, that there are really no restrictions at all anymore because our numbers of COVID positive patients in our hospitals are really down. The number of patients on ventilators now really down. Nebraska is doing really, really good. But I do support the mask ordinance because I do believe it works. I am a former critical care nurse. I worked in critical care. I worked in the operating room. I wore a mask for years. And it prevents the spread of droplets. And if my mask could save you or your grandmother or your mom or dad, why wouldn't you want to wear it? And a good example of how these masks really do work is the flu season. We're not talking about that too much because you know why? It's non-existent this year.
Which is crazy.
And it's because of people wearing masks, it's social distancing, washing their hands. Dr. Poor has given me statistics yesterday. In this time last year, we had over 2,000 cases of documented influenza in Douglas County. This time this year, guess how many we have? 4.
Wow.
I mean, 4 cases of documented influenza, it's non-existent. And it's because of the protective measures people are taking. So until people get vaccinated and until we feel like we've got control of this, all of those non-pharmaceutical practices that we could do, the distancing, the hand washing, not touching your face, the mask, anything that we can do is only going to help. And I have no hesitation of saying my background in healthcare and as a critical care nurse, I truly believe that the mask is something that works. Now, a lot of people will say, you're violating my rights. You shouldn't be able to tell me what to do. And they oppose the ordinance because the ordinance is a mandate. But at the same time, it has really, really convinced people, I think, with the ordinance that it is something that people need to do, and we are seeing the results of it.
Let's turn then to public safety, because the coronavirus is just one of the many challenges that the last year has brought us. Take us back to last summer when our city saw a lot of unrest. Can you walk us through your response to those weeks of protest and sometimes riots, and what you think the future looks like as far as public safety? Those were really hard, trying times. I worked with our police chief and our first responders very, very closely during that whole period of time. Of course, we all believe in people's rights. We all believe in a right to peacefully protest. But I will tell you, when people break the law and they destroy public property, and they hurt each other, they have to be held accountable. And a lot of them had to be arrested. There was no doubt about it. I asked the police chief for a full report. It took him months to give it to me, but the majority of all of those incidences, those protests that turned into riots, were recorded. Body cameras recording, we looked through thousands of hours of body camera. When Able 1 was flying up above everybody, we have a live link right now, and we could see it on there. We could see it at real time, and it's a real high resolution recording too. We looked at everything. We could see the entire events that happened, the one Friday night, the one Saturday night. We learned a lot from it. We've changed policies from it, but largely our police officers acted appropriately. There were a few that didn't. There was one that was fired because of what he did. But it helped us because it helped us review all of our policies. It helped us review everything that we do in situations like that. And it made us understand that although rare, we weren't as prepared for it as we needed to be. That was something rare that hadn't happened that often. For example, we learned that our communication system was not that good. On that first Friday night, when that peaceful protest started at Crossroads, and all of a sudden it was spread out for 5 blocks, the police were giving commands, but they couldn't hear them. So we knew we had to purchase a better PA system right off the bat, and we did. But there's a lot we learned. We changed a lot of policies because of it. There was a national push, for example, like there was a big push to say defund the police is a great example. For me, that was something reckless. That was something I would never do.
I think, you cannot have a safe city without good law enforcement. We have a very good police department in the city of Omaha, and defunding them is nothing I would ever consider doing, and I'm not going to do it. In fact, in 2021, I actually raised the police budget. It's well managed. Chief Schmatter does a fantastic job with the police department, and he is no nonsense. And he makes all of our officers follow our policy. Another thing I wanted to bring up that a lot of people don't know, but our police department is accredited, and less than 20% of the police departments across the country are accredited like we are. We're accredited by a national organization called CALEA, and they come in every 3 years and they go through every policy we have, and they make sure we are following best practices throughout the entire country. So we are an accredited police department, and we review our policies frequently. People were saying no more chokeholds. They saw what happened up in Minnesota, the chokehold or the knee to neck hold. We don't even teach that. We don't do chokeholds. We don't even teach it. That's not even part of what our policy is. So there's a lot of things that we have already done in Omaha, but there's a lot of new policies that we reviewed and looked at. For example, one of the policies is that we've changed is now officers are required to report incidences that they see a violation of policy. They're required to do that. So if a younger officer sees a veteran officer perhaps do a knee to neck hold, like which happened up in Minnesota, they are required now to report that. Well, one may say, well, a rookie is not going to report a veteran police officer. Well, they will now because they'll lose their job. There's a big chance of losing their job if they don't. So we really wanted to make sure that our policies were up to date and that we were open. We listen from all those events, from the protests. We listen. We learned. The police have done an excellent job at community relations. Our gang unit, for example, does an excellent job. Since I've been mayor, we've expanded the gang unit, a lot more members than used to be. But their job is to really get out in the community and learn the community, learn who the people are, learn what the issues are.
Just to clarify, members of the gang unit of the police.
The police department, right? Yeah, we have an entire gang unit in the Omaha Police Department, and we've expanded that. But the relationships is what we were talking about, and those are what is so good. You can't believe how many people have our police chief's cell phone number because he gives it out, because he likes being out in the community, and he's a real hands-on police chief. And so I think our community relations are good. I think they've always been good. I think during the civil unrest during the summer, there were things going on all over the country. And it's not unusual when those things happen that there's an uptick in crime. And we had an uptick in crime too. Our homicide rate in 2020 was higher than I liked it to be. The year before, it was in the low 20s. Last year, it jumped up to 37. We don't like seeing that, but we hope that that was a one year issue because of everything going on in the civil unrest all over the country. It's pretty typical for that to happen. But our overall crime rate, and we evaluate, we have an index of 7 different crimes we evaluate every year, and the FBI evaluates what our crimes are every year. Overall, our crimes are down, which is very, very good and very positive.
We've talked about a lot of issues today, but looking forward, what are some issues that you're hoping to address in the next several years?
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things is to navigate through the pandemic. We must make that one of our primary focuses. And that not only includes getting people vaccinated, but that's helping people recover. Our businesses took a big hit. Restaurants, bars, our hotels have been devastated because of all of the events that were canceled. Along with that, our sales tax, our occupation taxes, our hotel motel taxes, all that revenue that we were counting on wasn't coming in. And so one of the things that we still have to focus on is not only getting us out of this, the physical part of it, getting people vaccinated, but helping businesses recover. There are still a lot of families that are really suffering too, more than that you would imagine, that are really suffering with rental assistance or paying their mortgage or paying their utilities or even food. I had a talk yesterday with the director of our food bank, and he said this time last year we were spending, before the pandemic hit, they were spending on an average of about $80,000 a month as far as food goes. It's $1.5 million right now. And people that have never used the food bank before are using the food bank. So that is primary importance. Second has always got to be public safety. That's my primary responsibility. We got to keep our city safe. We got to make sure that our police are up to the sworn strength that we have, that they're trained well, that we develop the policies we need to keep our city safe. Another thing is we passed a $200 million bond issue during a pandemic last May that adds an additional $40 million a year for our roads. Our roads were in bad shape. I took years to study it, to develop what we needed to do to make our roads to the standards they need to be, and that is something that will be ongoing. And so we will be doubling the amount of street work, street reconstruction, and street resurfacing that we have done in the past, and that's a big goal of mine, to work with Public Works to make sure all areas of Omaha are addressed, and that we address even not only the concrete and asphalt streets, but the unimproved streets. So that's another big thing that I need to focus on and work on in the next 4 years. So that's just an example of three different things. Job growth, job training is another one I would add in there that's really important. We are one of the first administrations that really focused on workforce development and work training. You know, we give money to, for example, to Heartland Workforce Solutions to help people get the skills they need for the jobs that are out there. But even though our unemployment rate in Omaha has now dropped again, the highest it was about 9% in April, last April. We're back down to 3.5%, which is unheard of in normal times. But during a pandemic, really unheard of. But at the same time, a lot of people are not with their past jobs. A lot of people are now underemployed or are holding 2 or 3 jobs. And so I really want to continue focusing on workforce development and work training so that we can get these people with these businesses that didn't survive, for example, is to make sure that they get the training they need for the jobs that are out there. And work with the chamber to continuing to bring more businesses here to give people multiple opportunities.
You've taken on a lot of major issues as mayor.
Yes.
Many people, my age, might not have known about it, but when you were first elected, you, for example, were facing the big union contracts thing. Mm-hmm. But looking back over your entire term as mayor, what's one thing that you can point to that you're particularly proud of? What would that be?
Well, I can think 2 off the top of my head. So number 1 is the public safety issue. And that is, that's my number 1 responsibility. And we have great success with that. I added 100 new police officers. We opened up a 5th police precinct. I know they were talking about the need for a 5th police precinct when Mike Fahey was mayor. I mean, that long ago. We got it done, and it's not that we got these things done. We have seen results. We have seen our crime statistics do remarkably well, homicide rate down, number of shootings down. Omaha is safer, and that's the one thing that I think I am most proud of. But another has to be that bond issue with our streets. There's nobody in Omaha that would disagree that our streets are in terrible shape. They've been pretty much neglected for 50 years because they didn't have the money to do it. But I was working with finance and with our public works department at what we could do, and then we decided we weren't getting ahead, and so I assembled this team of national experts to come in and help me decide what we needed to do. And their job was to tell me why the roads look the way they do, what we needed to do to fix them, how much it's going to cost, and how to pay for it. And out of that, we developed this roadmap for better streets. I went out on the road. I did multiple town hall meetings telling people about how I came to this conclusion and what I wanted to do as far as passing a bond issue and what that would mean. We raised money to do it. We worked real hard on getting the message out, and it passed. And it passed by a huge margin. And so now we will be able to resurface twice as many roads, or reconstructed twice as many roads as we had before. And we will catch up. And we will be to the point that we're not going to have roads deteriorate to the point they are today where you can't even fix a pothole anymore. So that was another really, really big accomplishment I think that we made that was unprecedented for it to pass like it did during during a pandemic. So those 2 things really stand out in my mind.
So the Nebraska High School Republicans not only tries to give high schoolers a platform to educate themselves about politics and local issues, we also try and connect people that are interested in campaign work. So if there's a young person out there who's interested in helping you get reelected and joining your campaign, how would they get involved?
They can call my campaign office. They can go on my website. They can look at my Facebook. You know, we welcome all and everybody. We need a lot of volunteers. We appreciate all the work they do. They do make a difference. Take it from me, as I said earlier, I'm one in 2006 that I lost a legislative race by 14 votes. So no doubt, every vote counts. For people to say, well, my vote doesn't count, or my work making 15 phone calls a night may not make a difference. Oh, yes, it does. And so if people really believe in the candidate and they want to help the candidate get elected, we could use their help. We could use their help making phone calls and knocking on doors and handing out materials at people's doors. It's a little bit more challenging because of the pandemic, but all of that work really does make a difference. We need the help, we need the work, and we'll try to make it as fun as we can when you come here.
Sure. Once again, a huge thanks to you, Mrs. Mayor, for joining us today.
You're very welcome.
You can connect with Mayor Stothert on Instagram at Mayor Jean Stothert, or with her campaign at Students for Stothert. Or like she said, you can go on to the campaign website at jeanstothert.com/volunteer. Mrs. Mayor, once again, thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thanks for having me.